so to speak. You know, when the record comes out, it'll take whatever it is we're doing now that much further, but at the same time, we're out there and doing it just as a band.
I touched Axel, man.
I peed in my pants.
Well, as you might imagine from that, this is a tour you really should catch. And if you haven't done so yet, here are some tour dates.
Look at the hate we're breeding. Look at the fear we're feeding. Look at the lives we're leading, the way we've always done before. Shot the man who said peace could last forever. And in my first memories they shot Kennedy. I went numb when I learned to see. So never fell for Vietnam. We got the wall of deceit to remind us all that you can't trust freedom when it's not in your hand. When everybody's fighting for their promised land. I don't need your civil war. Feed the rich while it buries the poor. The power of the government if it grows restoring that bread well. I don't need your civil war. We're filling. Look at the blood we're spilling. Look at the world we're killing, the way we've always done before. Look in the dark we've wallowed. Look at the leaders we followed. Look at the lies we swallowed. And I don't wanna hear no more. My
collective annihilation of bears and government officials, for example, to create a vacuum. Then we fill that vacuum. As popular war advances, peace is closer. I don't need your civil war. It feeds the rich while it buries the poor. The power of the gun children in a human growth destroyed and breath anywhere. I don't need your civil war.
Well now, this award is for the best heavy metal video. Woo! And by the way, Jethro Tull is not nominated.
Aerosmith, Ragdoll. Def Leppard, pour some sugar on me. Guns N' Roses, Sweet Child of Mine. Metallica, One. Hold my breath as I wait for death. Oh, please, God, wake me.
Okay, and the winner is... All right, Guns N' Roses! We want to thank everybody for this. Despite the Grammys, the screw up on the Grammys, we're going to take this from Metallica. All right? Thank you. Metallica, got a Mia.
Welcome back to MTV's 7th Annual Video Music Awards Show. You just missed Living Color on their way inside. As you may have heard last year at the Video Music Awards Show, Izzy Stradlin from Guns N' Roses and Vince Neil from Motley Crue got into a fist fight. God, it was great. And as it turns out, when we paid a visit to Axl Rose at his new home here in Los Angeles recently, that incident was still very much on his mind, along with many other things. Take a listen. If Guns N' Roses are the Rolling Stones of their generation, a large part of the reason is W. Axl Rose, who may be the most exciting and charismatic singer of the current hard rock era. Born William Bailey and raised in Lafayette, Indiana, Rose started out singing gospel music. But after butting heads with local authorities, he hitchhiked to Los Angeles, hooked up with his old friend, guitarist Izzy Stradlin, and over the course of a couple of years put together Guns N' Roses with drummer Steven Adler, bassist Duff McKagan, and a powerful guitarist named Slash. The band's 1987 debut album, Appetite for Destruction, and its controversial 1988 EP, GNR Lies, have sold more than 12 million copies. But there have been problems. Drugs, as Rose himself noted during an onstage tirade during a show with the Rolling Stones last year, and with internal relationships, which led to the departure of Steven Adler several weeks ago, and his replacement by drummer Matt Sorum of The Cult. But the group has continued working away on its long-awaited new album, a 5 LP set containing nearly 2.5 hours worth of music, which should be out early next year, and which Rose predicts will be the really great album he's always known the band had in it.
You had mentioned you had some goals for this record. I mean, you guys are in a position where you're the hard rock band in the country, if probably not the world. Where do you go next? And what are you trying to demonstrate?
There's lots of kinds of material. Basically, with all kinds of different reactions in the press and this and that, it was kind of like the only way to show where we've been and to make ourselves happy was to just try to put it all out. Try to put all the material out at once, which, 148 minutes, that hasn't really been done. I mean, Springsteen put out a 5-album box set, but it was live. It had been done over the years. Most of this is new material, and there's a couple cover tunes in it.
Is this album going to be also mixed up like GNR Lies? There's going to be a lot of acoustic stuff on it too. There going to be different stylistic things going on.
Yeah, there'll be a few acoustic things. There'll be some songs that are acoustic going into electric, back to acoustic and stuff like that. I actually play guitar on a couple songs for the first time. I can only play 2 strings, but it's some pretty cool punk rock type stuff.
So when's this album going to come out? Can you say, or are you still
we're hoping the beginning of the year, January, February, and we're looking at March as starting a tour. Yeah. That's what the plan is.
Well, how come Steven left the band at this critical juncture?
Steven didn't leave the band.
Or how come you and
Steven was fired.
Oh, okay.
Steven, we gave him every ultimatum. We tried working with other drummers. We had Steven sign a contract saying if he went back to drugs, then he was out. Yeah. He couldn't leave his drugs. And other things have happened involved with Steven, that Steven is basically someone I used to know. It makes me feel bad, but there's other things beside the band that he was involved in with his drugs that have been very dangerous and scary, and I want nothing to do with him.
Is that what you were talking about when you were opening for the Rolling Stones in L.A. last year? And you said somebody in this band has been dancing with Mr. Brownstone, essentially?
Oh, there was... majority of the band was at that time, or too much alcohol, or too much something. Me, I was eating too much or whatever, and just sitting on my ass too much.
Yeah. How's it going with the new drummer? Is he fitting right in? Or it must be very hard at this point to bring somebody new into the band, isn't it?
It was a miracle. Yeah. He has saved the band's life. He came in, he's in an up mood, he works, he writes his own material. Yeah. He writes a lot, he works real well with us. He takes suggestions well, he keeps everybody in line, keeps the timing great. He played 29 songs in a month.
Yeah. Did you consider that valid when people say, well, you're up there in front of kids, you have to set a good example? I mean, a lot of people say, well, no, I'm an artist, I don't have to set an example, I just do my art. I mean, how do you feel about that?
It's real tricky. Our first major tour was with Motley Crue, and the audience was younger than most audiences we played, like on the Aerosmith tour or on other tours or our own tours and the tours with the Cult. And it was real hard to do the song It's So Easy, because there's a line in there, I drink and drive and everything's in sight. We were talking about kind of how we got away with things and we're lucky to be here. It was real hard knowing that some of these kids would just go out and go, yeah, I drink and drive, everything's inside. I mean, Izzy put it best when he said, a lot of people think our record means, party and do cocaine and rock and roll, and it's like, and that just ain't what it is. Yeah. And so Izzy was going to quit at one time because he didn't like the way people were reacting to it. Heard something on the radio last night when Frank Zappa broke up the Mothers. It was because people were clapping for all the wrong reasons. Yeah. It's hard when you know that you're doing your material and the audience, a majority of your audience, isn't getting what you meant.
But you had mentioned there's something a song on this album that's coming up that might cause some problems, you think? Is there anything
There's a song called Coma that is like 11 minutes and 45 seconds long with no chorus. Okay. And I think there was only one verse that like somewhat repeats itself. It's Slash's Baby. It's his monster. The song used to be called Girth. But I started writing about when I OD'd 4 years ago, and the reason I OD'd was because of stress. I couldn't take it.
Yeah.
And I just grabbed this bottle of pills in an argument and just gulped them down.
Yeah.
And I ended up in the hospital. But I liked that I wasn't in the fight anymore. And I was fully conscious that I was leaving.
Yeah.
I liked that. But then I go, all of a sudden my first real thoughts though were that, okay, you haven't toured enough, the record's not going to last, it's going to be forgotten, and this and that, you have work to do, get out of this. And I went, no, and I woke up, you know, and pulled myself out of it. But in the describing of that, some people could take it wrong and think this means go put yourself into a coma, you know, and so it's really tricky, and I'm still playing with the words to figure out how to like show some hope in there.
Yeah. Well, you seem to have, I mean, from a couple of years ago, like ODing on pills, you've come a long way since then. Do you feel more settled down now? You seem pretty relaxed and together.
Yeah, but it's been a lot of work to do that because there's, you know, we got used to, like, as the Eagles would say, everything all the time, and you know, living that way and going for it, and all of a sudden you started to, and then that's what got us here. That's what got us signed. That's what got us on top of things. And then you got to a point where you go, wait a minute, everything that got me here is also starting to I'm starting to self-destruct. It's starting to tear up my life. I have to figure out how to channel my energies other directions. It's a weird one. Settling down is a weird one, you know.
Do you think it's just a function of like getting older and learning more and being more aware of what's going on?
It's realizing there's life after, you know, 21, life after 25, life after 27. You know, 27 was the hardest year. I met Prince, and I was talking with Prince, and he was like, how old are you? 28? And he goes, last year was the hardest, wasn't it? And he was saying how 27 is like the bitch. It's the hardest year.
Really?
27 was definitely my hardest year.
Well, it's all behind you now.
Yeah, it's still a mess, but like I'm used to when it gets a mess.
Yeah. But what do you do? Well, let's take Two Live Crew as an example. I mean, this has been a good and a bad year for them. What do you make of the fact that in the United States for the first time a record can be declared illegal, essentially? I mean, it's just...
I think it's crazy. I mean, I think it's like, you know, saying the Diary of Anne Frank, you know, influences people in a bad way, or something, or the dictionary that if it has a definition for a four-letter word is in a bad way. I mean, there was an article in Penthouse magazine saying that if you want to like point fingers and say what influences people in a bad way, and most powerful influence and like what damage has been done, it's like the Bible has caused more wars and death than anything by people reacting to it however they feel they should react to this, more than any other book, you know? So unless you're going to get rid of Shakespeare, unless you're going to get rid of the Bible and things like that, back off. And, you know, I'm sorry if it makes your job of raising your kids a little bit harder. Maybe, you know, you should have thought about that beforehand, before you had your kids. So.
I mean, do you think you'd feel different about this after you had a kid?
No, not even if I had a kid and he did something because the record said do it.
Yeah.
You know, I don't think I would feel different at all, because I think about that a lot.
What's the first music you remember hearing when you were a kid? Is there one thing that turned you on and said, wow, this is what I want to do?
When that happened, I was already playing and singing and church music and all kinds of things. When it happened that, is this what I want to do, was Led Zeppelin's Jamaica. When I heard that, I was making fun of it all day long, because I was always writing down the lyrics to all the joke songs that were out, Spiders and Snakes and stuff, and passing out to all the kids. But I heard that song and I was going, yeah, there's another one. And I was not making fun of it. But by afternoon recess, I was in the corner with the radio waiting to hear that song. That, Benny and the Jets, just made me go, I want this.
It's funny, I wouldn't normally picture you as an Elton John, like, launching your consciousness of music.
Elton John is it. If like, you know, especially the first 7 albums, Bernie Taupin to me is the best lyric writer that's ever lived on the face of the earth, and Elton John was just amazing in the studio and the recording of everything. And some of it's so art. I mean, to me, that's my classical music, because some of his stuff is classical.
Yeah, right.
You know, And so I listen to Elton John all the time.
Have you patched up your differences with Vince Neil and the boys? He had a scuffle last year backstage at the...
Oh, no way.
Did you, no? Oh, okay.
No way. Haven't patched up anything.
What's
And
the,
there's,
what's the
you know,
dispute there?
Well, I mean, they think... I've read in the interviews of theirs that they feel this like I'm just, you know, standing up for Izzy and stuff. But Vince should be careful what golf courses he's mouthing off about Axl on and who he's playing golf with. You know, when he goes out playing golf, mouths off about Axl, and he happens to be playing golf with people that work for me, stories come back. It's, you know, it's funny because Izzy's like going, because people think it's going to happen sooner or later or whatever, and it's like that Vince and I'll get into it or something. You know, and Izzy laughs because he's like, that guy, you know, had a full-on free shot, you know, and hit like a powder puff, you know, and he was like, so it's like, it's pretty scary if the guy thinks about a real hassle. You know, I put in a magazine, you know, anytime he wants it, anywhere, Atlantic City, I don't care. We'll put money on it, you know. I don't care, you know, and then he tried to turn it around and say the same thing, but, you know, the invitation's there. I'm easy to find. If you really want a hassle, you know, we can have it out.
I always thought everybody on the LA scene was so tight and friendly and everything. You know, it's just...
Oh no, it gets real competitive. We tried to help a lot of bands when we knew we were taking off.
Yeah.
And even some of the bands that we were helping, I don't want to name names or anything, ended up getting very jealous because they were having to like kind of like exist in our shadow a bit. And that was really hard because we were like, we could have given the gigs to somebody else. Yeah. You know, we could have helped someone else out.
Jeez. Did you still feel part of the scene? I mean, you still go out, right? Can you still go to clubs and stuff?
A little bit, yeah. I can go out more now. People don't, it's not as crazy as it was. Yeah. It's the ball's starting to get rolling again, and it's starting to get crazy again. But I can go out a little bit. About a year ago, it was a mess. Now it's mellowing out, and I think people are a little bit, I don't know if it's intimidated or what. They're just, now they kind of look at me like, oh my God, no, that can't be him. Even if they're talking to me, they don't think that they would see me, which is kind of cool.
What did when you finally got on the stage with the Stones last fall? Were they what you expected them to be? You know, 27 years on in their career, do they still have something going for them? Did you think?
Oh, it was great playing with them. It was a definite dream. I mean, it was something that we told people we were going to do, and people were going, no, they're broke up. I don't care. We're going to open for the Stones. You wait. We're going to do this. I don't know how, but we're going to do this. So, and then, you know, I told Keith Richards that, and he's like, well, you made it, mate. Let me have a cigarette.
Axl Rose of Guns N' Roses. As you heard there, Guns N' Roses will have a new album out. Well, we hope they will. 2.5 hours of music, whole bunch of CDs and records in January.
Before he was the baddest boy of rock and roll, Axl Rose was a sweet-faced choir boy.
Of course, I've always known him as Bill Bailey.
Don't you come home, Bill Bailey. Lafayette, Indiana, they know him as Bill Bailey, a cute kid who used to sing in the school choir. But he's grown up to be Axl Rose, one of the wildest stars in rock and roll. Now his hometown is singing, Don't You Come Home, Bill Bailey. They sell millions of records and make millions of dollars, but Guns N' Roses is more famous for the offstage antics of their lead singer than their heavy metal music. Axl Rose has become the undisputed bad boy of rock and roll, and the tattoo-covered lead singer has done plenty to earn that title.
I don't think Axl Rose sits at home and wonders how he can make himself look more of a bad boy. I think he's just a bad person.
Last year, Axl was arrested in Los Angeles. Although the charges were dropped, his next-door neighbor insists that he hit her over the head with a wine bottle.
See it in court. That's not the act of somebody who is completely stable.
This past summer in St. Louis, dozens of people were injured when a riot broke out at a Guns N' Roses concert. Several lawsuits were filed accusing Rose of inciting that riot, all because a fan was taking pictures.
Axl Rose is a guy he's a classical bully. He punches out paying customers who want to take a photograph of him.
But back in Lafayette, Indiana, where Axel grew up, many were surprised that the sweet-faced kid in the high school choir turned into the rude rock and roller.
There was nothing in his particular background here at Jeff High School that would lead you to think that that's the way his behavior was going to be. He was just a nice young man.
But Axl Rose wasn't always the controversial bad boy. In fact, he wasn't always Axl Rose. He was plain old Bill Bailey.
When I turned on my MTV, it stunned me, and I didn't really think of it being Bill Bailey, because they said Axl Rose, and of course I've always known him as Bill Bailey.
There's nothing radical about him, and when he'd walk or when I'd see him, I'd say, "Thing, Bill Bailey, won't you please come home?" and things like that. I mean, he was just a personable little redheaded kid.
And he was like any typical 8th grader, you know, a little immature, and he used to spout off quite a bit.
Axl Rose is now famous for his X-rated lyrics that some would like banned. Back then, his buddies had a better way of keeping him quiet.
They got mad and they taped his mouth shut because he wouldn't shut up. And then also they stuffed him into a locker and closed the locker on him at that time because of his mouth.
Even in the 8th grade, there might have been a hint of the man to come.
He was not your normal Lafayette kid. It's a conservative city, very conservative, extremely conservative.
Monica Gregory says her good friend Axl had problems with Lafayette police. Records show he was arrested several times for minor offenses.
He got hassled a lot because he had longer hair. Maybe he wore a bandana, which once again goes right back to the fact that he was different, unique, you know, special.
There was no love lost between the angry kid and his hometown. Bill Bailey dropped out of high school and left Lafayette as soon as he was old enough. Axl nowadays refers to Indiana as a concentration camp.
And I'm kind of disappointed, I guess, that he has kind of disavowed himself or disowned the city of Lafayette, as I understand it, and said, "I never want to go back," and things of that sort.
At this point, we probably have no reason to invite him back, and